I founded 8chan in 2013, left it in 2016, stopped working with the Watkinses entirely in 2018. I saw a lot of their behavior and why they, why I believe that they took over QAnon and all of that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty much why we're talking. So
I mean, nobody has a firsthand view like you have of this conspiracy theory and the related conspiracy theories. But I think everyone wants to know. I mean, whether they're the layperson or deeply involved in this rabbit hole, or, what will happen to QAnon in the post-Trump era?
So obviously, QAnon is going to fracture. That's the most thing that's clear right now. The reality that they all experienced on the 20th is affecting them in a lot of different ways. And before, QAnon was very cohesive, even though a lot of them were looking at it in different ways because they all had trust in the plan. But now that the plan is extremely unclear what's going to happen next, even to the people who believe in it, there are all these different takes that are emerging on it. For example, some of them are taking the idea that the new Biden administration is illegitimate, that we as a nation essentially should not accept this presidency, that the federal government has essentially been taken over by who they believe to be somebody associated with communist China. So they are taking more of a sovereign citizen approach, saying that the government is illegitimate and we don't need to pay attention to it. We only need to kind of follow the legitimate government. And Donald Trump could say dumb things to make that argument even stronger. We shouldn't ever count on Donald Trump doing the right thing. So remains to be seen how much he'll feed that narrative. Like one of the worst things that he could do is just to start saying things like, towards the end of my presidency, the deep state was stopping me from doing a lot of stuff. I was trying to sign the pardons. I was trying to do this. I was trying to do that. And the people there were just stopping me. They totally, you know, anything he can do to make it sound like the government is illegitimate and that that he was, stymied in his final days, will feed that idea. Another branch of the QAnon, how they're dealing with it is they are viewing it as a psyop. So they're saying that, well, the deep state is just so powerful and so big that they tricked us again, and uh, essentially, in their view, the CIA, FBI, NSA, those organizations set up QAnon specifically to trick them. I know it might seem strange, but a lot of them do believe that. The problem is, no matter which kind of way that they go with the narrative, they still believe in the fundamentals that there is a deep state, it's full of satanic pedophiles, that the government essentially that is being run by these people is not a legitimate government, and that they still have this ideology that leads to violence if perhaps if in the right person or if uh, acted upon.
Now that there is somewhat of a power vacuum at the top of the QAnon conspiracy, with former President Trump being gone and Ron Watkins, who was kind of the ringleader of the conspiracy, stepping away for the time being, there is a power vacuum at the top of the QAnon conspiracy theory. Are the true believers vulnerable to exploitation by other groups?
Of course, yes, that's what they're most vulnerable to right now because it the whole idea that QAnon is a psyop, for example, that is something that is very easily used by other far right groups to kind of get you into their ideology because a lot of them are feeling like they were tricked and they're not going to be looking to the mainstream media to tell them why they were tricked or how. maybe some of them will, but it's kind of, they are already extremely far right, and they're probably going to look to other far right sources to explain what happened to them. And an explanation that white supremacists are giving right now is that they were tricked, there was no plan, and that they need to essentially take revenge against the forces that tricked them. And white supremacists would want them to believe that those are Jews. So, what you see a lot of far right groups doing right now, neo Nazis, white supremacy groups, they are trying to connect the words in the minds of the believers, deep state with international Jewry. They want them to see those as the same thing, essentially. So globalism, uh, they want the Q believers to see all three of those as the same. So to essentially renounce Q and become a white supremacist. And obviously, not all of them are going to do that, but that's a compelling narrative for a lot of them. And a lot of the core of QAnon was already anti Semitic. So it isn't that difficult a transfer.
So you are saying that anti-Semitism was a part of many of these related conspiracies, is a part of QAnon, and they are being preyed upon, the true believers, by extremists who harbor anti-Semitic views.
Yes, that would be true. And I mean, even certain Q drops were highly anti Semitic. You know, I don't remember the exact number of it, but there's a Q drop where he's replying to a post that shows a Jewish guy in a river of blood with all kinds of different nationalities in it. And the Jewish guy is saying, why do they persecute me so? So it's like, that is extremely anti Semitic, and Q has always had those elements to it. And it's just white supremacists are seeing kind of what they believe and trying to amplify the parts that they think are helpful to their ideology. Because they see this as kind of a big group of people now that are without a leader. And all of these far right groups are kind of jostling among themselves to get this new intake of members.
Prior to the 20th, there was a call and response, kind of the sing-song relationship between former President Trump and QAnon and other extremist groups. What do you expect will happen with Trump and these groups now that we are in the Biden era and Biden administration?
I mean, it really depends on what Donald Trump starts to say and what he starts to do, because he could very easily convince a lot of them that he was essentially taken over in a coup. He could very easily do that. If he just started to tell them that he was not able to do the things that he wanted in his last days as presidency, as I said, that could very easily radicalize a lot of them. It remains to be seen how much Donald Trump cares at this point, because he seems to be more interested in kind of saving his own skin. It's interesting that he didn't even do a lot of the pardons people expected. He didn't pardon himself like a lot of people expected, because his own lawyers told him that that would be kind of admitting guilt, and he has a lot of state cases. So Donald Trump is essentially a narcissist and very selfish, and he is going to be only focused really on himself. So I don't think that he even necessarily thinks that the Q people are helpful for him anymore. He's not in office. Really, the purpose that they served was explaining to Donald Trump's fans why Donald Trump was not doing the things that people expected. So it was just a cover story that there's a deep state that's stopping Donald Trump from being president, and that he would actually be a really good president, in a conservative view, if this deep state wasn't there. It was just an excuse, really. So I don't know that Trump needs the excuse anymore now that he's not in office. And he, you know, Donald Trump, something we saw throughout his entire administration is that he discards his fans extremely easily. When they are no longer serving his purposes, he will just throw them away. Sidney Powell is one example where, she was there at the Four Seasons talking about how she's on the team and they're gonna fight, and then Donald Trump unceremoniously just kicked her out because she got a little too crazy for him, I guess, even though she was one of his biggest fans. I think that Trump obviously knew what he was doing when he was signaling to them, but he also has enough plausible deniability that he can just be like, well, sorry that you guys got tricked, but you know, I live in Mar-a-Lago, so I don't care about you, basically. Yeah.
QAnon is big enough, and I see the traffic numbers to understand that even without the conspiratorial leanings, it would be a valuable demographic, a valuable market. And I know that there were people making money off of QAnon. So who's making money, and what happened to them after the 20th? Does the conspiracy stay big enough that they can continue to cash in, or do they have to kind of move along as well?
So it was really interesting watching all of the different influencers try to understand what they were going to do next. And some of them are just outright psychopaths, like Ron Watkins, who he just kind of wrote a statement that essentially boiled down to, all right, losers, we did our best, bye bye. Make sure to donate to my new project. Like it was, let's just move on with our life. He did not even show any emotion at all. And then you have kind of other influencers who were like very distraught by this. And it kind of makes you wonder whether they believed in a lot of what they were saying also. Um, you have other ones who are kind of taking a break from it. It all of them are in disarray right now, and obviously their audience is going to shrink. There's just no way that you can become an influencer telling people that there is going to be another 4 years of Donald Trump, and especially like Joe M, for example, he locked himself so much into it, saying that Biden would never be inaugurated. We know this is a fact. We know this is a fact. And he was writing that all the way until the 20th. So, I mean, his followers aren't stupid. They can read that and understand that he was really wrong, and that's going to affect how many people are reading his stuff. Um, but I do think that these influencers are extremely conniving people, and that they will be able to come up with new narratives that keep a large number of people hooked. Um, I think that a lot of them are just going to have to evolve. And the influencers that were popular during, like before, while Trump was in office, are probably not going to be exactly the same as those who are popular now. But a lot of these Q influencers are going to be able to evolve and maybe even grow their audiences. Sure, some of them are going to shrink and some of them might not even last, but yeah.
Yeah. So where are those true believers in 6 months or 18 months by the time we get to the next midterm election? Um, and in that time between then and now, what happens to the true believers?
Well, I the thing that I'm most worried about with the true believers is assassinations. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about because they are very distraught and they literally believe that Biden is a satanic pedophile taking orders from Xi Jinping in China, and that they have a duty as patriots, which they call themselves, to do whatever they can to resist this new world order. And I think that the way that they see their political opponents, there is really a reason to believe that a lot of them are going to want to commit assassinations, and especially those who are being pushed away more and more by everybody else, because it definitely hurts that even a lot of people on the right are making fun of them. The Proud Boys, etc. All of their people that they would consider to be fellow travelers are mocking them for having trusted this plan and being gullible and being dupes. And, nobody likes to feel stupid. That radicalizes them more. And it is pushing a lot of them towards wanting to take physical revenge against those that they see as being in the deep state. So I would be very concerned right now if I was any Democratic congressperson, even city level officials. It's hard to say, what somebody who's radicalized into Q and doesn't feel like they have anything to live for is going to be capable of doing, because a lot of the Q people were holding on to the idea that they would be proven right and that their friends and family would all come back to them when they saw the military coup and admit that Q was true, and they would all be happy families again. And that is not what happened. And a lot of the Q people sunk plenty of resources, plenty of family connections into this. And a lot of them are maybe feeling like they don't have anything to live for. And that is not a good recipe for avoiding terrorism. So,
Do you feel safe?
personally, not really, but I try to be careful, and I could be a target, but I also think that a lot of the Q people are much more angry at people they see as being in government, and I'm not. I just from reading, the different far right websites where they talk, 8kun, Gab, uh, Parlor, they are much more kind of focused on what they call the demon rats. That's their word for Democrats. So they, and what they would call the rhinos, Republicans in name only, like Romney. So I would be much more worried if I was in government right now. Yeah.
You said something. Well, you said a lot of things that are important there, but something that really resonated. That's nobody likes to feel stupid. Uh, how do we help people out? How do they true believers leave, and how do we help them leave?
So I'm not a cult expert. I'm a computer programmer. So there's limits to my knowledge, especially when it comes to that question. However, there are experts who have stated that we really need a massive de-radicalization program, and it it, it should be seen as kind of a mental health crisis, because you have all of these people right now, and a lot of them broke down on Gab and Parlor, and their videos are being spread on Twitter. And the wrong thing to do is to laugh at them, because you're just making it worse. I understand that a lot of these people were in a movement that championed fascism and that championed killing a lot of people through military tribunals. However, it's important to realize that these are still people. They're still fellow citizens. And whatever can be done to de-radicalize them is important. And the Biden administration certainly needs to talk to cult experts and disinformation experts and get a plan as to that.